Gulf of Mexico storm possible next week with tremendous rainfall over Central America on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June 13th. So we're still waiting for a tropical cyclone to form, but the Western Atlantic and Eastern Pacific certainly is rumbling, and if nothing else, it certainly looks like we're going to have a series of big rain events after that flash flood emergency in southern Florida last night caused issues as well. Well, in the Atlantic, it's day 13 of hurricane season, and we've got three areas of interest around there, two of them in the Atlantic, one just over in the Eastern Pacific, but these two southern ones are both going to be competing probably to become that Gulf of Mexico system in the southwestern Gulf. The 20% system moving off the coast of Florida now looking less likely to form than it did yesterday, and on day 30 of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, we're still looking at that 20% area of interest off the coast of Mexico, which could form on its own earlier on in this weekend into early next week, and then the other system to its east could be flying off towards its north. Now in the Western Pacific, there's no areas of interest to look at right now, but one or two little areas of disturbed weather in the tropical regions there, but not too much to talk about at all. And in the North Indian Ocean, it is quite similar as well. No areas of interest, as you'd expect, with just that monsoonal cloud cover there over the Bay of Bengal. Actually shrunk a little bit since yesterday, it seems, with a little bit of thunderstorm activity, well, quite a bit of thunderstorm activity over there in northern Bangladesh. In the Southwest Indian Ocean, just in case you're interested, there's nothing here either. There is going to be a non-tropical low down there off the southeast coast of Madagascar, which might blow up quite quickly in the next 2 days. Raised a few eyebrows, but it shouldn't become a nameable cyclone. So let's check in on this area of interest that's already established, although it doesn't look very good on satellite. It's 181 kilometers from Cape Canaveral. This is the one that swept through Florida yesterday. 206 kilometers from Melbourne, 217 from Daytona Beach, 277 from Freeport on Grand Bahama, and 1381 from Bermuda, which is where it could end up later on early next week. It's not likely to develop into a tropical cyclone, and it is expected to remain fairly weak. Indeed, it may not ever reach tropical or storm force winds as it moves off towards the northeast. Satellite imagery of the region right now showing that a lot of precipitation is still going on south of Florida over the Florida Strait, along the northern coast of Cuba as well. They'll be getting quite a lot of rainfall, and you can see just to the top of that image there a few little bursts of thunderstorm activity as well from the Invest Center region, pushing up close to the coast of South Carolina as well, so that might be interesting there. Here's a close-up floater imagery on the Force 13 website, which you can access on your own, force13.com/satellite, and we're also running an automated stream showing all of this as well. This system moving gradually northeastwards, although it's very difficult to pin a center on it right now at all. And there's radar imagery, not much help either, but we do expect that it's just east of Cape Canaveral and north of the Bahamas. And its motion will probably speed up a little bit throughout the course of the next couple of days. There's a wide shot of the eastern seaboard as well. There's a lot of precipitation there, a moisture plume extending all the way from Cuba, well, from the Yucatan actually, towards the northeast. And this is the Caribbean itself. We're waiting to see where that system might form in the southern Caribbean eventually. No sign of it yet. And the eastern Atlantic, which showing a small system there moving off the coast of Africa, which shouldn't last very long. And there's the Eastern Pacific, which is also looking very messy, but also very wet there as well. And that's why we're very concerned about those areas along along the southern coast of Central America, including Mexico. And this is the Western Pacific. Showing very little going on here, to be honest, but just general thunderstorms blowing up all across the Philippines, and a few here and there in between the Philippines and the Micronesian islands. This is the Bay of Bengal, showing that area of storms over mainly water areas there, but some of it along the coast of Myanmar, and there's the west coast of India as well, with a few thunderstorms blowing up throughout the course of the day. Now, wind shear graphics are still showing fairly decent conditions over the southern areas of the Atlantic there, in the Western Caribbean, in the southern Gulf of Mexico definitely. And this is the Eastern Pacific, where that disturbed area of weather there's causing a lot of wind shear, but in and of itself it's probably not doing too badly. In the Western Pacific there's a big gulf there of light wind shear over large parts of the Philippine Sea. So if a storm ended up there, it would have a good time with low wind shear values. Looking at sea surface temperatures, they're obviously climbing gradually as we go through the spring to summer period, and this is the 30 degrees Celsius waters off the coast of southern Mexico in the Gulf of Tehuantepec. A few spots there as well in the Gulf of Mexico and off the coast of Cuba, off southern Florida and around the Bahamas. Temperatures up to 30 degrees Celsius now, but really extending out over the open Atlantic as well with those very warm temperatures. The yellow is the 26 degree threshold, which is usually what's required for tropical cyclone formation. There's the Western Pacific with extremely warm waters still in the Philippine Sea and off the western coast of the Philippines as well, up towards 32 degrees in a few spots. And the North Indian Ocean also still looking good. Really very little change actually in the last few days here. It's pretty stable and temperatures are still looking very good. For what it's worth, we're still looking at the Southern Hemisphere regions too. This is the Southwest Indian Ocean, Mauritius and Reunion. Temperatures just slightly below 26 degrees Celsius. Around the Australian region, those temperatures gradually decreasing along the coastal regions as well. The area of Darwin still looking good though, and around the Kimberley, temperatures still touching 27 degrees Celsius there. Gulf of Carpentaria really cooling down. And in the South Pacific, some cooler waters entering the region around the eastern Fiji Islands now as well, with those areas starting to drop below that 26 degree magic number. Compared to average though, most parts of the globe are above in terms of sea surface temperatures, including a particularly striking ridge there in the Atlantic Ocean and the mid-Atlantic there towards the Canary Islands. Really, some temperatures there up towards 4 degrees above average. Gulf of Mexico around 2 to 3 degrees above. Eastern Pacific looking good there as well in general. La Nina breaking down by the looks of things, and in the Western Pacific pretty evenly spread there with warm temperatures as well. Oceanic heat content though is continuing to drop in the Eastern Pacific, which I find interesting, but it's still looking decent in a few spots there. Western Pacific though really on fire right now with those very high amounts of oceanic heat content. It really is explosive if a storm enters that area and conditions align. In the Atlantic also, a few areas where things are looking really good, just south of Jamaica being a hot spot, just south of Pinar del Rio in Cuba, and that little area, the loop current in the Gulf of Mexico. All hot spots right now for oceanic heat content. So let's check the computer models for the next 5 days, and this is the GFS. Will it go off the deep end? It might do. Let's take a look at what happens. Well, not much initially, but eventually you will see the development of that little system there in the southeastern or southwestern Gulf, moving up towards the Yucatan Peninsula, tries to become a tropical storm there. Does it succeed? I can't quite tell, but it does certainly get those tropical storm force winds. Look off the coast of Mexico on the Pacific side. You can see a little circulation there as well for another storm that tries to form and moves towards the east and then moves northwards, and those two, it's going to be a toss-up really on whether either of those systems become that Bay of Campeche system that could become a potent tropical cyclone over there. That's what the National Hurricane Center are expecting from one of those systems. They're giving a 40% chance. Look at the rainfall though in the Central American region in the next 7 days. Extremely high amounts of rainfall with maximums pushing 1,200 millimeters there, getting up towards 48 inches, with high amounts further north as well across the Yucatan, up towards 200 millimeters there, and around Veracruz with those rainfall amounts reaching over 300 millimeters. Looking the longer range, there's another tropical storm out there in the open Atlantic heading towards the northeastern United States there. I don't know if you saw that, but then there's another system forming behind that one that was in the Bay of Campeche, moving up towards the same area. Watch that sequence again where you can see both of those systems. So that's 3 storms in the Atlantic, and then maybe a 4th one down there in the southern Caribbean as well. So extremely interesting to see what might happen with all of those systems. It really looks like a mess. Let's scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all of our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts still available because we're still waiting for Hone. Well, in the silly range, now this really is silly, and this that last Atlantic system there really gets itself going in the northwestern Gulf, and look at that, blowing up into a powerful major hurricane making landfall near the Texas-Louisiana border. I must stress this is a very long way out. That's the third storm, and then there's a fourth storm forming off the coast of Florida. I said fourth earlier, but that was actually the fourth forming at the end of that loop there. It feels like peak season, doesn't it? That only though if that actually comes to pass, which at the moment is very unlikely, and a very powerful storm that would be if it did so, akin to Hurricane Audrey, I would say, for the time of year. Well, looking at the Western Pacific, it's still showing in the very long range something that will happen near Guam. There it is again, quite similar to what we were looking at in yesterday's run actually, but it still is right near the end of the month, 28th, 29th of June. So again, very long range for both of those scenarios, and I wouldn't put any credence into that forecast at all just yet, but there are definitely rumblings and signals. On this day, a tantalizing looking Hurricane Barbara. On this day in 1983, June 13th, the only system that was active, it was a tight compact storm which peaked with winds of around 140 miles per hour as it moved towards the west. It enjoyed around a day or day and a half at Category 4 status, reaching its peak intensity probably towards the evening hours of that day. That was Hurricane Barbara, of course not the strongest Barbara that we've ever known. 2019 got to Category 5, and that was really a beauty, just like this one was. Well, back to today then, if you've got your breath back yet. The first name on the Atlantic naming list, let's just go back to today, where we don't have any storms active yet. Alberto's first up. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta, and in the Central Pacific, the first name, or the next name, is Hone still. In the Western Pacific, the next name is Gamey, and in the North Indian Ocean, it is Asna. As of now, we are at 20 storms. We're well below average, 35% below in terms of accumulated cyclone energy. Could that be all set to change in a big way? We'll have to see over the next few days, but we'll have the updates. In the Australian region, the next name is Robin. Southwest Indian Ocean is Jeremy. And in the South Pacific, our next name is Pitta. That's all from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.